Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for June 24th, 2024. I am the board chair, Eric Eldridge. The following meeting is being recorded and broadcast by Tyngsborough Media. The meeting is available through our local cable access channels on Xfinity and Verizon Fios and is a live stream on our website, www.tyngsboroughma.gov. A recording of this meeting will be available through the video on demand portion of our website. Open meeting laws require that any member of the audience who intends on recording either video or audio so declare that now. Seeing none, after instruction from the State Fire Marshal and the Tyngsborough Fire Chief, in the event of an emergency, there is an exit directly across from me at the rear of the room, and obviously one here to my left. With that, I would like to invite all of those who can stand to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I will start with board introductions. Go from my left here.
Good evening, Jacqueline Schneidertz, Executive Assistant.
Good evening, Ron Schneider.
Jackie Gilfus.
Good evening, Ron Cohane.
Good evening, Colin Loisel, Town Manager.
Excellent. Let's start with meeting minutes. Can I get a motion on meeting minutes for June 3rd?
Chair, I move that the regular session meeting minutes for review and approval for June 3rd, 2024.
Seconded.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? That carries 4-0-0. Citizen and business time. Did we get anybody who wanted to, any citizens want to come up and speak before we get started? Seeing none, we're going to move down past it. We're going to move the town manager's report down a little bit later as we have a very special ceremony, at which time I would like to welcome Chief Howe to come up to, where do you want him?
I'm going to stand here, and
Okay.
then I'm going to walk over. And
Perfect. Thank you, Chief Howe. I will hand it off to you.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here tonight. It's always a special occasion to be able to promote an officer who's earned this, and I'm very appreciative for the town and town government in general, but obviously the support of the board and the town manager, Colin Loisel. It means a lot to us. Officer Kuzmarek started his career in Tyngsborough as a reserve officer in 2013, became a full-time officer in 2016. He has worked as a detective, currently serves as a field training officer, is a member of our motorcycle unit. Officer Kuzmarek has consistently performed his job as a police officer with integrity and has upheld the professional standards expected of leaders in law enforcement. He has received numerous letters of commendation, including recently in 2023 for medical life-saving measures on a person in cardiac arrest. And in 2020, we received a commendation along with two other officers who were able to evacuate a resident from a burning home. Officer Kuzmarek has also regularly volunteered his time for the Special Olympics and has taken part in the annual Law Enforcement Special Olympic Cruiser Convoy, which he has brought his daughter, Morgan, with him. This promotion tonight is the result of a sergeant promotional process which occurred on March 21st. This process had two components, a written exam and an oral interview panel conducted by external and law enforcement executives. The written exam is a high degree of difficulty, and officers are challenged in both the written and oral board in numerous areas, including police procedures, law, ethics, and critical decision-making. In both the written and oral board, Officer Kuzmarek excelled and topped the exam taken by 6 officers. I have come to know Jason as a man of few words, but who is genuine, honest, and with ethics beyond reproach. He is dedicated to his law enforcement career and is a man deeply committed to his family, who you see here with him tonight. With that said, Officer Kuzmarek, I don't always butcher his name as well. I apologize. Can't blame you for that. Before swearing you in, the normal procedure is that he would read the oath of office, oath of honor, but unfortunately, my fault, I didn't tell Jason to bring his glasses, so I'm going to read it, and he's going to repeat it back to me. I finally met somebody with worse eyesight than me. On my honor, I will never betray my integrity.
On my honor. I will never betray my integrity,
my character, or the public trust.
my character, or the public trust.
I will treat all individuals with dignity and respect,
I will treat all individuals with dignity and respect,
and ensure that my actions are dedicated
and ensure that my actions are dedicated
to ensuring the safety of my community
to ensure the safety of my community
and the preservation of human life.
and the preservation of human life.
I will always have the courage to hold myself
I will always have the courage to hold myself
and others accountable for our actions.
and others accountable for our actions.
I will always maintain the highest ethical standards
I will always maintain the highest ethical standards
and uphold the values of my community
and uphold the values of my community
and the agency I serve.
and the agency I serve.
Officer Kuzmarek, please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, state your name,
I, Jason Kushmarek,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties incumbent upon me
that I will faithfully
and impartially
discharge the duties incumbent upon me
as a sergeant for the town of Tyngsborough,
as a sergeant for the town of Tyngsborough,
according to the best of my ability and understanding,
according to the best of my ability and understanding,
agreeable to the rules and regulations
agreeable to the rules and regulations
of the Constitution and the laws of the Commonwealth,
of the Constitution and the laws of the Commonwealth.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. So Officer Kuzmarek, Sergeant Kuzmarek has asked that his wife Lisa, accompanied by their daughters Morgan, Aubrey, Savannah, come up and do a badge pinning. Congratulations, Sergeant Kuzmarek.
Congratulations, Sergeant.
Thank you, we appreciate it. You know, you have a lot in your agenda, but we appreciate the time and the support. It means a lot to our department. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
And-
Take some pictures outside.
Yeah, and I would like to note for all the folks at home, tremendous amount of support from the police department, dispatch, and colleagues, family, friends. Fantastic, congratulations. You don't have to sit through the entire meeting.
We weren't going to. Nobody wanted to be promoted.
I won't force that. Thank you.
We'd love to have you, but we understand.
Okay. All right, so right now, we're going to go into the public hearing for Parley Farms, 2024, one-day alcoholic license applications. I'll go through all the details. I'm sure Jackie has something ready for us to explain before we open up the public hearing. Is that correct? I will let you start, and then we can open the public hearing.
For your consideration this evening, you will find 22 one-day beer and wine license applications, an annual weekday entertainment license application, and 2 Sunday entertainment applications from Ellen Parley of Parley Farms of 95 Farwell Road in Tyngsborough for the 2024 season. The dates requested for the one-day beer and wine license are listed on your document this evening. I won't read all those. An annual weekday entertainment license is also being requested for Fridays and Saturdays between the hours of 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. for a vocalist, guitarist, children's musician, balloonist. Additionally, the applicant has requested 2 Sunday entertainment licenses for September 8th, 2024, and October 20th, 2024, from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. for vocalists and guitarists. All entertainment will occur outdoors. These events are similar to the events approved by the board last year. The applicant anticipates approximately 250 guests at each event and will have tip-certified servers whose certificates are included in your packets this evening. No alcohol will be allowed outside the property, nor served to individuals under the age of 21. All applicable fees have been paid, and a copy of the applicant's liability insurance and workers' comp certificates are provided. The applicant is aware that the rain dates listed will only be allowed if the Saturday event is fully canceled due to weather or other reasons, and does not allow for the individual license to be used on multiple days. Any partial Saturday usage will constitute use of the license, and the rain dates will not be allowed. The applicant has also been made aware of the following. The local one-day licenses are limited to 30 per calendar year. One-day licenses cannot be issued to any person that has an on-premises license application pending before the ABCC. They also must purchase alcoholic beverages for the event from an authorized source listed on the ABCC website. We have asked all relevant departments for comments, and there were no adverse comments at this time. The abutters were notified via certified mail by the applicant, and a legal ad was placed in the Lowell Sun on June 10th and June 17th of this year.
Thank you. Anything that you would like to add before we open the public hearing?
Well, thank you for considering our application. We appreciate you taking the time. We ran 3 of these events last year, and we intend to do exactly the same as we did on those 3. And our staff has been trained. We did not have any issues last year during those events, and we hope that you will favorably consider our application this evening.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions for me?
So why don't we open the public hearing, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Chair, I move the select board open the public hearing and waive the reading of the hearing notice and legal ad.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, carries 4-0-0. Public hearing is open. Are there any residents who would like to ask questions or discuss the Parley Farms one-day alcohol license items? This is for Parley Farms one-day liquor license. Would you like, if you can come up to the microphone up here, give us your name, address, and you can ask your question.
Fran Glavin, 105 Farwell Road. We just got here. Could you speak up a little? My hearing's a little.
Sure. So this is in relation to the Parley Farms is applying for multiple one-day liquor license applications. And the public hearing is just for that item.
Yes, okay, yeah, we were notified. We're just here to listen.
Okay.
Very good.
Any
Thank you.
questions or anything relating to?
Well, no, I guess Ellen and Ann could speak. That would be fine. And right now, how does it differ from what you had before, I guess?
It's the same as what we did before.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We just do the single day, so you have to reapply every year. So it's what we did, last year was the first year we did it. And so we're just reapplying for more. So it would be the same thing where the single day liquor license and for the entertainment license, what we had last year and got a lot of great feedback on is just a single guitarist and vocalist.
Right.
Kind of in the back, far away from the field too. Over where we have our big tent.
Yeah, no, I mean, the family entertainment is great, and, we live right next door, so we're very aware of what goes on, and the Parleys have been great neighbors, and things are under control. I guess serving alcohol is a big responsibility for anyone, and I know you're very observant and you're watching over everyone, so that's that's my concern. Of course, we have, as you do, the kids, lots of kids, young kids on the road now, and
we do treat this differently, Fran, than we did you know, our normal business. We have, you know, we are keeping eyes on everything, making sure people stay safe. But we know there's another level that we need to be at when we're serving alcohol. We do limit it over the course to, depending on the length of time we're open, to either 2 or 3 drinks per person at most. We'll only be serving beer and hard cider. So, but again, we limit them. We have tip certified employees, including Ann. So till we know so to keep an eye on the rules and all. And, you know, we live on the road too, so we want to make sure that we keep everything safe and continue to do the practices that we've been doing for many years, and just make sure we're not going to diminish the fact that this is different, a little different than what we did before. But we've done it 3 times last year, and we did not have any problems at all, and our staff was well aware of what their responsibilities were.
Right.
In keeping everybody safe, yeah.
As, you know, we see everything.
I know.
Yeah, so, no, there hasn't been any problems. They're just.
No, it's important to ask.
Yeah, one thing, I mean, this has nothing to do with the alcohol license, but on Farwell Road, there aren't many speed limit signs, and I don't know if it would be possible to add a couple of speed limit signs.
Yeah, I mean, we can,
Share that
yeah, we can take that under advisement. The town manager can work with public safety. The chief was just here to determine what would work best.
Okay.
There's a variety of things that we can look into. So Colin's writing that down right now.
Great. All right, thank you.
And I know that there are always other roads where speed is a challenge and an issue for people, and we want to understand where we can improve safety through a variety of mechanisms, not just the signs. There's temporary signs that can go in. There's different things that we can do to look at that, but we absolutely want to make sure that the roads are safe.
Okay, and another side note, when we're talking about safety, is the ends of the roads at intersections, at this time of year, they're getting very overgrown. And, I mean, this would be for the DPW, but...
Yeah, and for residents, and it's not really in the realm of this, but for residents, if you see situations that impact safety, that would be potentially the DPW would be involved, contact the DPW, and a lot of times they may see those types of things, and there are plans on those. Just encourage people to reach out to our town professionals so that they can go and address those items, because they absolutely want to make sure that they're addressed long before they become a problem.
Great. All right, thank you.
Excellent. Any other folks from the public looking to weigh in on this particular item? Okay, any questions from the board before we close the public hearing and then we deliberate?
No questions.
Nope, we're all set.
I don't think so. Just looking at the application, I noticed that the July 27th event is listed as a harvest festival, and then I think there was something about a fall festival, but it looked like it was over the summer. Would you just mind talking about like what the events are going to be and when?
Yeah, most of them are, so I think that one meant to say Harvest Festival, the end of July. We did a similar date last year. It was like blueberry and cut your own flower kickoff kind of thing. And then in the fall, we kind of do like Harvest Festival in early September before we get too busy. And similarly, it's kind of like a kickoff to apple season. Yeah.
Nice, thanks.
Yeah.
And then we have guitar players and they're same person, singer and guitar player, and on those occasions as well. So just to add a little more activity.
Thank you. All right, well, with that, I guess I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Select Board close the public hearing.
A second?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Carries 4-0-0. Okay, now, questions, comments on the applications. I guess I will start with Select Person Gilfus.
Yeah, I think this is pretty straightforward, especially since it was approved last year and there's no changes. It seems like a nice event. No questions, no concerns.
Councilperson Cohen.
Good luck with your events this year. I know you're expanding them, and good luck. It's always
Well-
been a great business there.
Oh.
And as we heard from your neighbor, they appreciate the care you take in the business.
Thank you. They're good neighbors. We're lucky to have such good neighbors.
Yeah, I was actually at one of the Harvard festivals last year. It was great. It was well-run, it was organized, there was, no issues, so good luck. I think it's a terrific thing to do.
Great, thank you, Ron. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I was not able to attend any of them, but I heard nothing but positive things. I think that this is a great idea. It's a good opportunity. I appreciate the hours. It's early.
Yeah, we don't like to stay up late.
Yeah, I don't blame you. So I don't have any questions at this point. I think that all my questions have been answered and there were no adverse comments. So with that, I will entertain a motion.
So Chair, I move the Select Board approve the 22 applications for one-day beer and wine licenses, the annual weekday entertainment license, and the 2 Sunday entertainment licenses for Parley Farms of 95 Farwell Road as presented.
Seconded?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That carries 4-0-0. Thank you for
Thank you
coming
very
in.
much.
Thank you so much for your
We
time.
appreciate your time as well.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's do public hearing for right of first refusal on 84 Kendall Road. If I could have you go through the memo, and then we'll see if any of the public would.
Yes.
Oh, the public.
You got it, Mr. Chair. On June 3rd, the Select Board was notified in writing by Attorney Douglas DeShane on behalf of the Joseph Husband of Mary Trust, which is the trust that owns the 27-acre parcel of land located at 84 Kendall Road, that they had entered into a bona fide purchase and sales agreement with an entity that is seeking to construct an assisted living/continuing care campus on the site. Per the approval of a citizen's petition just this past May at the annual town meeting, this use is now acceptable on the site in question, which is a B2. The property is currently enrolled in MGL Chapter 61A, which is a Massachusetts tax law that provides preferential tax treatment for parcels of land that are maintained as open space. In return for the tax benefit, the law requires that when certain conditions are met, including the notice of their intent to sell, the municipality where the land is located has what's called a right of first refusal. This entitles the municipality to intervene and purchase the property before the sale to other parties. It also entitles the town to assign its right of first refusal to a nonprofit conservation organization or the Commonwealth or any of its political subdivisions. Under Chapter 61, the municipality has 120 days from notice of intent to sell to exercise this right of first refusal and to record a notice of exercise or assignment with the Registry of Deeds. For the purposes of this specific instance, the town's 120-day period ends on October 1st, 2024. If the town fails to either waive its right of first refusal or execute the right and assign the right, then the town's right of first refusal expires. Ahead of the meeting this evening, the board directed me to solicit input from the Conservation Commission and the Community Preservation Committee to determine whether or not there was interest from other groups in the property. Both committees were invited to attend the meeting as well as to provide written comment. I have reviewed the letter from Attorney DeShane with Town Council, and I just wanted to clarify a couple of items here. In the letter from Attorney DeShane's, it includes a recommended motion that appears to tie your vote to waive your right of first refusal to certain conditions being met. It should be known to the board that Town Council and I are confident that that motion would not be legally binding, meaning that you would have no standing to challenge the developer if, for any reason, they failed to meet any of those conditions. The statute that deals with the right of first refusal doesn't contemplate or mention the resurgence of the right of first refusal. Essentially, once it's gone, it's gone. The letter also notes that their intent is to develop an assisted living facility / continuing care campus on the site. While we have no reason to believe that they have other intent, the board should know that it cannot waive its right of first refusal only for a specific use. This question came up last time. This means that if you waive your right of first refusal and for some reason this project doesn't happen or they decide to construct some other allowable use on the site, your waiver would still stand. Again, the statute doesn't contemplate the resurgence of your right. But as it relates to the 2 points above, there are certainly things that the board could do to ensure that its best interest is met. The most obvious is through a development agreement, which is very familiar to this board. That's something that we entered into with Toll Brothers when we were in a similar situation relative to the golf course. If you did enter into a development agreement, It could outline the specific type of development that would go there, i.e. an assisted living facility, as well as the various conditions that the town wants to see, almost all of which were volunteered by the landowner in that original letter. The conditions also, of course, many of them, could be added by any special permit or decision from the planning board. It is important for me just to set the conversation here. The board's decision tonight is not whether or not that parcel in question is suitable for an assisted living or continuing care campus. That would be a question for the planning board. The planning board would look at everything from whether or not there are utilities sufficient to provide that use, whether there would be traffic impacts, whether it would be detrimental to the neighborhood. Tonight, the board is simply charged with deciding whether or not the town should step in and purchase the parcel. Because, in all likelihood, the town would purchase this parcel if it was interested using CPC funds, I can say with full confidence today that our operating budget certainly couldn't purchase a parcel of land. I did ask the accounting department to review the status of all of our CPC funding. As the board's aware, 2 town meetings ago, we authorized a $1.5 million allocation for a partial renovation / demolition of the Winslow School. That was on top of that year's annual appropriations, which alone totaled roughly $1 million. We're working right now through the finishing touches on the design and cost estimating on the Winslow School, so we'll have a better idea of what kind of funding we'll need by the end of the summer. In the meantime, considering appropriations that were made just this past May, our annual revenue for CPC funding combined, the committee has just shy of about $550,000 worth of money available to spend today, but that would be only if they depleted all of their reserves. Added complication is that 2 of the buckets of reserve couldn't be used for this project because they deal with affordable housing and historic preservation. The only bucket you could really touch is the open space one. All that said, CPC, of course, is allowed to borrow money. We did that for the renovation of the old town hall, and we did that for the renovation of the First Parish Meeting House. While the cost of the debt service would come out of future year CPC allocations, it would still be debt incurred by the town, which would be used when considering our overall debt and liabilities. That would certainly be a factor in our bond rating review that we'll conduct this fall ahead of our permanent borrowing on the middle school. I would note that despite our request for comment from the Conservation Commission and the Community Preservation Committee, we did receive just 1 letter. That letter comes from Chaz Dowdy, who's a resident of the Flint Pond neighborhood, served on the Master Plan Committee, and was the vice chair of the CPC. Again, neither of those committees formally voted to express an opinion, but Chaz did submit a letter, which is included in your packet, which expresses his desire for the board to at least look into the purchase. The last thing I'll say is that anytime you use CPC funding, you are required by law to conduct an appraisal. We wouldn't need a separate CPC allocation because every year CPC allocates $50,000 for administrative expenses, and certainly an appraisal is an administrative expense. Given the size of the parcel, I feel comfortable saying that the cost of such an appraisal would be somewhere in the $15,000 mark. This is a pretty substantially sized parcel. So that is available today in the CPC's administrative expenses. Obviously, on July 1, that account resets to the $50,000 that was previously allocated. I think that I've laid out the facts of the case. At this point, it would be up to the board to decide next steps.
Okay, thank you for running through all of that for us. CPC and Conservation, have they met since we last spoke? Have they discussed this?
This has not been formally discussed in any public meeting of those bodies.
Okay.
The only comment we received is the written comment from Chaz.
Right. Have they? I'm just wondering if they've had an opportunity to even meet, because I think one of them is meeting this week, right? And then the other one, I haven't seen any upcoming meetings. So I'm just, it's hard for us to solicit feedback that's formal because you can't just ask one person if they haven't had an opportunity to have a meeting about it. So have either of them had an opportunity to have a meeting to even talk about this so we can say, provide us some feedback or make no comment, you know, whatever they would normally do?
Conservation certainly meets on a much more regular schedule. Whether or not the chair chose to make it an agenda item, I'm not sure. CPC only meets when requested. They have certainly not met. I did speak with Larry Clausen, who serves as the chair of the CPC. We spoke about what the CPC could afford. As indicated earlier, on a cash basis, it could not afford this. He did indicate that if the select board required them to make a formal vote, he would attempt to get a meeting together as soon as possible. But they also have not formally met. All of them individually, as people were invited to come to the meeting tonight, nobody attended, but they have not formally met.
Excellent, okay. Well, I guess I will open up to the board to to ask some questions before we open up the public hearing, because one of the questions I have is, if nobody's here for the public hearing, if we're not going to be able to make a decision on our own tonight, should we open up the public hearing and leave it open? I think from a procedural thing, or because there's nobody here, do we just wait until that next meeting? One of the first questions I have for my colleagues is going to be, do we have enough information here to make a decision? And if not, what information would we like to have? Because I want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
you know, we just came out of town meeting, and of course, this specific issue was a warrant article, a citizen's petition. And it was very clear. It was for this particular property, this 27-acre parcel that we're talking about tonight. And the use of it was for an assisted living, that they had somebody that was interested. And, you know, it passed. I believe it was unanimous. I didn't hear a single vote that said no. This is our form of town government. We put this in front of the residents, and it was unanimous. I have all the information that I need. The residents said, yes, this would be a good use of this particular property. And so to me, it's about as clear as can possibly be that this is what we should do.
Thank you. Select Person Gilfus?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I was going to say the opposite of what Select Person Cohen said, which was that I felt like in the absence of having formal feedback from CPC and Conservation, that I wouldn't want to make that call. I think they're the people who we put into the position to have an opinion on this. And so I think that this is an important thing for them to weigh in on. I think this is their charge, if nothing else. But I guess to your point, Select Person Cohen, that they were present at town meeting and they didn't bring anything up. So
That's correct.
yeah, so I suppose, yeah, with that logic, I can be swayed. But I mean, I would like to hear from them. I'm just disappointed that they're not here, I think is really what it comes down to.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I echo the last two comments. You know, I don't have an issue with the project as it was presented to us at the town meeting. I would love to hear Conservation and CPC just weigh in, if for no other reason, just so that they meet formally and tell us exactly what they think, right? So I think that's important to do. I think we could address Mr. Chaz's comments about keeping this space open through a development agreement, right? By making certain that portions of that property remain open space within that development. So I think you could satisfy sort of both parties, right? The people that want to retain the open space and the people that want to develop it. We can do both of those. I think we can achieve that. And I strongly feel that a development agreement would be in the town's best interest to make sure that that really happens.
Thank you. So procedurally, let me, I guess, ask a question relative to that, because there's a couple of paths that you outlined. One was the, just the waiver, right? We waive our right of first refusal, and then they can move on and do what they need to do. The other is we don't waive it, and then we enter into, some sort of development agreement relative to that. Procedurally, can you outline any pros and cons in going in each of those directions based on what we know so far?
Sure. I think, and I do also just want to say on the CPC front, you may remember that ahead of the fall 2023 town meeting, the middle school building committee asked CPC to weigh in kind of speculatively about whether or not they would support funding the softball courts, or softball fields. Sorry, I got pickleball courts on the mind. One way or another. At the time, the CPC, which has at least one new member and has a new chair now, expressed an unwillingness to consider something that wasn't a formal application before them. And so it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. Is it appropriate for me to complete an application to the CPC when we don't actually know what we're going to do? That said, in terms of your question, Mr. Chair, there's nothing that's certainly all of you have seen, and the letter is posted publicly. The landowner, through their attorney, Doug Deschaines, has made serious concessions, if you will, and commitments to maintaining certain access to the parcel, which could achieve some of the things that Chaz was pointing out at their expense. I feel comfortable saying that I can't imagine they wouldn't be willing to enter into some sort of a development agreement. The parcel sat vacant for many, many years with a whole bunch of allowable uses in a B2. They intentionally changed the zoning for this one particular use. I feel comfortable saying they are, in fact, ready to move forward with this type of use. So we don't need any action. You have until October 1st. If the board was to say to me, look, we'd be more comfortable waiving our right of first refusal if we had a development agreement, that's certainly the guidance that I need to move forward and speak to the developer. As it relates to the Conservation Commission, and this kind of leaves out CPC only in that we're not asking for money at this phase, we could certainly ask the Conservation Commission to put on an agenda, as an agenda item, discuss what other conditions or what conditions they'd want to see as a part of that development agreement, so that the development agreement would be truly representative of what Conservation and the Select Board desire. And that wouldn't require a formal vote of the board. I would ask that you table this item to your July 8th meeting, just so we can keep it on the calendar.
Yeah, and, I mean, from a monetary standpoint, I mean, I feel comfortable if we said we don't want to waive at this point until we have a development agreement, at least understanding what the parameters are around that. And I think tabling to July 8th, to me, makes sense. I do think that even if we look at like kind of where the costs might be for this, this is not like a $500,000 purchase of land. We believe it's somewhere between
1.4, 1.7.
Right, 1.4, 1.7 million dollars. So it's not a trivial amount, and it's an amount that we don't have, as you outlined, and we would have to borrow. Which, even though it's a separate mechanism for that, it's still we're taking on debt. The town is taking on some debt. So I do have some serious concerns. I do also have to say that having an assisted living facility and a continuing care campus in town, in that area, there is a need. We don't have that. And as we all know, needs around that are increasing. They're only getting more. So I just think that we need to, while we have until October 1st, I do think that we don't have to spend a lot of time going through this. I mean, I do think that we can come up with what the parameters are. I think that we just have to figure out what's the best way to make that happen, so that the town is protected and we're understanding all the facts. So I guess the first question I have is, do we need to open up the public hearing, and then keep it open, or do we just wait until the next meeting before we open up the public hearing?
I think that it probably makes sense to open the public hearing, just so that
That's what I was thinking, yes.
And then we can close it at the next meeting if nobody
It was
shows up.
it was on here, and I'm thinking what we should do is let's open the public hearing, keep it open till whenever we're ready to close that portion of it. Does anybody have any concerns about that?
What's the difference between opening the public meeting, keeping it open, versus waiting till our next meeting and opening the public meeting at that time? I mean, nothing can happen after we close our meeting tonight, right? I mean, technically the public meeting is open, but who are they going to express their views to?
It would only be in an open meeting, but we wouldn't, the only reason we would do it is we said it's on our agenda.
Yeah,
We said that
understood.
we would have a public hearing. So I think for formality, I think it would be good for us to open the public hearing. It's not like there can be a separate hearing that happens outside of us.
Yeah.
And there's no activities that can happen that, we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. I think it's just a matter of following, when we put an agenda item to say, yeah, we did it, let's open it. We didn't resolve everything, so as a result, we keep the public hearing open.
Mr. Chair, I move the Select Board open the public hearing and waive the reading of the hearing notice and the legal ad.
Seconded.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carries 4-0-0. Public hearing is open. If anybody would like to come and speak. Oh, there aren't any. All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I move that the select board continue this hearing to the next select board meeting.
outstanding.
Seconded.
Not
I
missing
have a
B.
motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I'm
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, carries 400. Do you need us to make a formal motion to have you look into the, a development agreement?
No.
Okay.
I will
You
get
have
a
what you
draft
need.
development agreement for your review. It, depending on what, I think Conservation is meeting next Tuesday.
Good.
So they have time to add this to their agenda, so
Yep.
I expect they'll be able to have some sort of a,
Yeah, just to, I mean, they don't have to weigh in, and it's one of those things, I look at it and say, it's one of those things where I think that we as a board, as we're looking at all of the information, we want to hear from others. We've done that. And
Yeah.
I think if we allow that to happen and bring this to our July 8th meeting, I think we'll be.
For me, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, they don't have to weigh in, but certainly they would look at it with a different lens that perhaps than we would. They might be thinking of some other things that we would not think of, so it would be just good to get their thoughts on the parameters of a so-called development agreement, if they would, yeah.
And I think that's where I was going also, which is when I had read the letter from the attorney and I read all of the materials, it seemed very obvious to me that this was the right thing to do. And knowing that we went through town meeting and people voted in favor for it, so I was like, yeah, let's waive that right of first refusal. But then seeing the email from Chaz, I was like, oh, I'm not seeing a perspective that I think is really valued here. And so that's why my gut said, hear from Conservation. So are you able to reach out to them to encourage them to put it on the agenda? Is
yes.
that
Yeah.
awesome?
Excellent. All right. So I think we can move on to new business, correct?
Or do we want town
No.
managers report?
Oh,
I
town
can't.
managers
You
report.
always forget about town manager.
I almost got away.
All right, town managers report.
It's a nice long one.
Colin,
It is.
take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was happy to attend Tyngsborough High's 2024 graduation exercises on June 7th, along with Select Board members Eldridge, Schneider, and Gilfus. I was incredibly impressed by the caliber of graduates, and many of their comments and remarks were comforting. The future is clearly bright. Congratulations to all. The Tyngsborough Police Department was awarded a $20,000 grant from the Commonwealth to replace an older electronic fingerprint scanner that is used for booking and was originally purchased by that same grant in 2015. We were originally planning for this to be a future capital request, but as is standard, the PD sought external grants before adding it to their capital plan. The grant covers the purchase and delivery of the cabinet scanner with printer, computer, keyboard, as well as the installation, training, and a 1-year warranty. The new scanner will be in service by the end of next month. I would like to thank the BAPS organization out of Lowell for hosting Chief Howe and I at their annual charity walk on Saturday, June 8th. This year, they donated proceeds to the Tyngsborough Police Department. The BAPS organization is a religious and charitable organization that does philanthropy and service across the world. They are currently in the design phases of a substantial new construction for a new temple on Westford Road at 50 Westford Road, and we are excited to welcome them to the community once that facility is built. The Lowell Regional Transit Authority is running free bus service on all of their routes for the month of July. This includes the Route 10 bus, which has stops in Tyngsborough, Dracut, and Hudson. There's more information about all of the different routes at lrta.com. I'm excited to share that the Town Manager's Office and Media Department are working on launching the town's first Citizen Academy. The program will start in September and will be a 6-week program that will introduce interested residents to the intricacies of town government. The goal here is to get more residents involved in local government by breaking down barriers and bringing more of our residents into the fold. We'll formally announce the program in early July and we'll seek applications at that time. The Tyngsborough Public Library kicked off their 2024 Summer Reading Challenge. The challenge runs from June 15th to August 5th. You can learn more at tinglib.org/summer-reading. Remember that the Tyngsborough Public Library has a lot going on this summer and is a great resource for families looking to do something during the summer vacation. We have seen an increase in the use of our recycling center at the Highway Department. Unfortunately, along with that increase, we've seen isolated instances of the drop-off site being used inappropriately. Last week, we saw cardboard left all over the parking lot when the cardboard dumpster was full. There were oil containers left next to that dumpster and other items that were not acceptable in the scrap metal bin. Our Highway Department was fortunately able to address these items, but repeated misuse of the site will force us to reconsider access. That's simply a cost thing. Anytime we have contaminated bins or toters, it costs the town money, and eventually the relationship with these vendors may make it a little more prohibitive for us to get involved. I'd like to thank District Attorney Marion Ryan for coming to the Council on Aging last week to talk to our aging community about common scams and ways to avoid them. There was a great crowd in attendance, and the information was very helpful. She left behind a bunch of literature that we've shared with patrons at the Council on Aging, and we've pushed some of that out through the newsletter and our website. On that same note, I'd like to congratulate Council on Aging Director Barbara Roach on completing a person-centered case management certificate program through the BU School of Social Work. Barbara is one of, I think now 13 certified COA directors in the Commonwealth, and as a part of maintaining that certification, has to complete certain credits in coursework. A couple procurement updates. There's an RFP out right now for interested individuals looking to use the Hunter Norton property for certain agricultural uses. The Conservation Commission brought this project forward as a way to get a passive use on the site while maintaining access. Proposals for that are due on June 26th at 10 a.m. We're seeking sealed bids for the bituminous concrete for the Highway Department. This item is typically part of our annual highway goods and services procurement, but the last vendor was unable to honor their optional year 2 prices, so the procurement laws required that we rebid it. As a reminder, we're still seeking sealed bids on the Sherburne Ave Rec Center, the amenities, that property that was donated by the Toll Brothers. We had an optional site visit last week, and bids are due on Wednesday at 10 a.m. We've reviewed the final design for the new pavilion on the Sherburne Ave Rec Center last week, and we're preparing those bid docs to be available beginning on July 3rd, with bids due on July 17th. Logistically, we're likely issuing 2 separate bids for that project, one for the concrete and footing work and one for the actual construction of the pavilion. The reason for this is simple. We likely have the funds available to do at least the concrete work now. We've applied for a $400,000 a housing choice grant, which we're hoping to use to offset the cost of actually constructing the pavilion. But we'd like to get as much done as we can with the current bucket of money. So if the pricing is good, we'll award a contract for the footings, and then once the money's available, issue another IFB for the construction. Last week, we had a meeting between Town Hall staff, including our Superintendent of Public Works and Police Chief, with a new gaming facility that's being constructed at the Pheasant Lane Mall. We had a very productive conversation about the improvements that they're planning on making to the parking lot, as well as their most recent security plan and ways that they can be good partners with the police department. You may remember that as a part of them getting their permits from Nashua, they were required to get the Tyngsborough Police Chief to sign off on their security plan. He made several requests of them. They followed through with all of those requests, and they have an approved security plan. They are aiming to open by January. On Thursday, I'll be at Suffolk University for the graduation of the latest round of the Suffolk MMA Municipal Management Certificate Program, which our very own media director, Roni Camille, recently completed. The program is a joint effort by the Mass Municipal Association and Suffolk University to help public sector employees hone in on their management and leadership skills, and we are proud of Roni for participating in the 22nd round of this program. And then finally, just a reminder to mark your calendars for the 2024 Party by the Bridge, which promises to be bigger and better than ever. It will happen on Saturday, August 24th at 11 a.m. in the town center. You can learn more at tyngsboroughma.gov. We've changed the fee structure for the event this year. In the past, you paid for parking. It's incredibly hard to keep track of. The spots turn over all the time. It's important to note that nothing from the operating budget supports the block party. That's through revenues from other block parties. And so this year there's a $5 admission charge for everyone older than 12. Children to 12 years old will still get in for free. All of that money stays within the rec department. I just wanted to make that clear. None of that comes back to the operating budget. They use that for future events like Festival of Trees and the block party. I said a lot, and that is all that I have.
That was quite a bit. So I will open that up for questions and comments from the board, starting with Select Person Gilfus.
Very thorough. I am participating in the Library Reading Challenge.
Ooh.
It's awesome. If you don't have the Beanstack app, highly recommend downloading it. That's where you participate in the challenges. No questions, just enthusiasm.
Excellent. Select Person Cohane.
So, as our town manager said, we applied for a $400,000 grant through the housing grant. That was only possible because this community, and I would applaud this community again for passing the MBTA warrant article at the last town meeting. So this just opens up for us to be able to apply for a lot of grants, and there's the communities that did not support MBTA will not be able to apply for those particular grants. I would like to talk a little bit about the recycling center. I mean, I have heard so many great comments about the recycling center. You know, they just added, what was it, the scrap metal. bin. And that thing is full constantly. Residents have really looked at that. It's a way of getting rid of some really heavy, heavy pieces. Instead of going into your garbage, it goes into the scrap metal bin, and we actually get money for that. There's also a textile bin over there, a cardboard bin, and they just added a food waste. We have composting, but with this, you can add meat, like oranges and citrus elements in there. Every time I go by, I look and I usually see a car in there. It's really been well used. And it would just be a shame if a few residents do not respect all of our residents in this town and are doing things that is very obvious. When you go into that site, it's very obvious what you can do, and leaving just oil containers around is just rude. So please, everybody, follow the rules. Let's this continue to be a great resource for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. Select Person Schneider.
I have no questions. That was a great report, Colin. Thank you.
Yeah, it's fantastic as always. I think this is great. I do think that people should understand that bituminous concrete is asphalt.
Oh, yes.
Just wanted to make sure that people
I think
understood.
everyone at home
I
knew
had to
that.
look it. I had to look it up. It was one of those things. I'm like, what is bituminous concrete? It's
That's shorthand, yeah.
That's
That's
the
common.
asphalt that we use for the roads. No, I think this is fantastic. Lots of great stuff happening. Good look back on some things that have already happened and some things that are upcoming. That is fantastic as always. For those that may have missed this or you want to see it in a more condensed version, it's on social media. Perhaps there might even be a podcast at some point on some of these things. So please pay attention. There's a lot of things that are happening, and I get people that will ask me, like, when's this happening or whatever, and it's like, you didn't pay attention to Colin's report. You would have had everything that you need. So I encourage residents to look on that. Thank you again.
It's on multiple venues now too, right?
Anywhere you get your podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You can sign up for alerts on the town's website. I could go on all day. You have to choose to intentionally ignore these updates. That's
agree.
how accessible it is.
That was my point.
I do look forward to seeing how you're going to capture this very long
Tough,
report
I know.
in one snapshot.
Thank you, Jackie, for understanding my struggle.
There's a lot to cover there. It's just one slide, so.
Yep.
Tomorrow, we'll see it.
Excellent. Okay, let's go to new business now. Now I can get to it. So let's go to 8A, Tyngsborough Block Party applications, the road closure, one-day liquor license, entertainment for Party by the Bridge, as Colin mentioned, which is August 24th, 2024.
Thank you. Included in your packets this evening is an entertainment application, a one-day liquor license application for the Tyngsborough Recreation Annual Block Party to be held on Saturday, August 24th at the Town Center. Both licenses will be valid from 11 a.m. through 9 p.m. Additionally, they're requesting road closure permits for Winslow Road, Kendall Road, and a lane restriction for Middlesex Road. They are also requesting permission to close Winslow Road from the intersection of Middlesex to the intersection of Kendall from 7 a.m. on Thursday, August 21st through 7 a.m. on Monday, August 26th. They are further requesting permission to close Kendall Road on Saturday, August 24th from 7 a.m. through 9:30 p.m. and to implement a lane restriction in the right southbound lane on Middlesex Road on Saturday, August 24th, 2024 at 7 a.m. through 9:30 p.m. If the road closures are granted, the Recreation and Parks Committee will be required to coordinate a closure plan with the police, fire, and highway departments. A copy of that plan should be filed with your office. Recreation Director Allison Page has been here in the past to answer questions. This is similar to past years. In reviewing this application, our office requested comments from all relevant departments, and there were no adverse comments. Additionally, the applicant sent notices to abutters by certified mail.
Thank you for that information. I will open it up to the board for questions or comments. Start with Select Person Gilfus.
I have a couple questions.
Yes.
One is a procedural question about how this is different than the public hearing that we did for Parley. So,
Why
yeah,
is there no public hearing, it sounds like the question.
yeah, I think so.
The type of entertainment that Parley was doing required the the actual public hearing. The abutters notices that we sent in this case were strictly because we're closing, and Kendall Road will be closed to residents only from Bryant Lane to the fire station. At the fire station, we'll implement a hard stop. Nobody will be able to go by it. The abutters notices that we sent were not because we're having a public hearing on it. It's because people that live along Kendall Road need to know when the road's going to be closed for access.
This event is so much more invasive, disruptive, so I would think that this would require a public hearing and not the other one. I don't know the rules, but I will learn them. That's okay. This is my second meeting. My second question is, do we know what time the fireworks are?
So that's,
At dusk.
do you want to answer?
Typically,
say
they're at
dark.
dusk when
Yeah.
it gets dark enough.
So 9:30 is enough to clear that?
Typically, it has been in the past.
And then my last question, looking at the application, it does look like it says 9 PM on the application, but I presume that 9 PM is not late enough, so I just wanted to clarify. If you look at page 2,
Yeah, so the liquor license is till 9 PM.
so the liquor license is until 9. Is that what that, okay.
Now, my having worked and doing the liquor, the fireworks may go off at, let's say, 8:30, it's somewhere in that range, and they go for 15 or 20 minutes. They have stopped serving alcohol by 9.
For sure.
That's one of those things, so I believe that's reflective of that. And the 9:30 is relative to the road
Road
closings I
closures.
think you're talking about.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
I will open it up. Select Person Cohen, any questions, comments?
Done this many times, all set.
No questions, Mr. Chair.
The only thing that I do think residents, at the last year's, there were some questions. Some folks had some questions on road closings and things like that. Colin, we're working better with the local residents to make sure that they're aware here, and particularly with the church.
Yes.
Around activities. Can you comment on that?
In years past, and I can't speak to last year, so I can blame my predecessor for that. In years past, we always sent, because the first year we did this, we learned the hard way that we didn't communicate our intentions for the road closing. In subsequent years, not including last year, I gather, we did send direct notices to anybody that lived along the road closure, whether you were on the closed to local traffic only or the hard stop, saying this is what the plan is. We did do that this year, probably a month ago. So everybody is aware. There will be officers stationed at all of those points on Kendall Road who will help residents navigate back to their house if necessary. Really, where the hard closure is, the only entities that we would be impacting would be folks living on Flint Road right there by the fire department, and half of the church parking lot.
Yeah, and now we're multiple years into this where it's essentially the same schedule, right? Before we were trying to do it. We've got it, it's Saturday, things are happening, so I think people are a little bit more aware of how the road closings work and the logistics relative to that. I think we're gonna have there'll be lots more communications that we're gonna need to have around the admission fee, parking, all the things that leading up to it. But from a road closure standpoint, this makes perfect sense. The liquor licenses, we're not waiting on this. We know that it's there, and we're checking that box off early.
And,
Yes, go
Colin,
ahead.
just one reminder, when you're talking about road closures, from experience from last year, they closed the bridge to all pedestrian traffic when the fireworks are taking place. So people should know that you have to be on one end or the other before that starts.
Yes. And we can ask for a better guesstimate
Yeah.
of when the fireworks will go off so people can plan to avoid the bridge accordingly.
Right.
Yeah, and some of those are residents and some of those aren't. But yeah, I think that we can, work through some of
Yep.
those things. But relative to this item, I have what I need, so I will
Will we
entertain a
have-
motion.
Sorry, new sign that's going in the center? When is that happening?
Hopefully before this. But in the leading up to it, we will put in various locations on either side of the bridge those ugly orange ones that I'm replacing, so people know to impact. But yes, I'm fairly hopeful that our new digital sign will be installed ahead of this.
Lovely.
So I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the Select Board approve the entertainment license and one-day liquor license for Saturday, August 24th, 2024, from 11 a.m. through 9 p.m., and approve the road closure permits for Winslow Road from 7 a.m. on Thursday, August 21st, 2024, through 7 p.m. through 7 a.m. on Monday, August 26th, 2024, for Kendall Road on Saturday, August 24th, 2024, from 7 a.m. through 9:30 p.m., and to implement a lane restriction in the right southbound lane on Middlesex Road on Saturday, August 24th, 2024, from 7 a.m. through 9:30 p.m. Thanks for that long one.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Carries 4-0-0. Okay, 8B, approve HCA, Jushi, DBA, Nature's Remedy, 420 Middlesex Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last month, the town was notified by the Cannabis Control Commission that the host community agreement, otherwise known as an HCA, that we had with Jushi, MA, doing business as Nature's Remedy, was no longer compliant with the most recent regulations. As the board is keenly aware, and as we've discussed many times, when the town zoned for adult use marijuana, the law permitted the municipality to include up to a 3% community impact fee from all sales as a requirement in the HCA. This was on top of the 3% excise tax that is collected with every transaction. It goes to the state and then comes back to us directly. In 2022, then Governor Charlie Baker signed a bill into law that reformed the cannabis industry. Most notably, it changed the way that municipalities collect impact fees by requiring that the town only collect impact fees for impacts that can be, quote, directly measured and tied to the marijuana business. As such, the town of Tyngsborough immediately stopped enforcing the existing language within the HCA because it could not tie any of the expenses directly to Nature's Remedy. This was tied to legal opinion from our council. Nearly every municipality followed suit. There's one or two, some in our area, that are trying to fight this and trying to make it work. We'll see how fortunate they are. The risk, of course, is that if they don't make it work, they'll have to repay every penny to these companies. I should also note, though, that when we talk about impacts, the biggest one we hear about is traffic. In response to that, there are many occasions where the police department requires that Nature's Remedy hire a police detail. When that happens, Jushi hires the detail directly and they pay for it directly. So it's not like we're spending money on overtime to have an officer direct traffic and trying to recoup the expenses. Although we have certainly not violated the law because we have not enforced the HCA provision that required a community impact fee, it remains in the HCA, and so when Jushi applied for their 5-year renewal, the Cannabis Control Commission deemed it unlawful. As such, I began working with Town Council and Council for Jushi to craft a new HCA that is compliant. That HCA is attached for your review. You don't have much flexibility anymore. That same act created a template HCA. It's pretty cut and dry. You really don't have much room to tinker with it. The only substantive change that you'll notice from our last one is the removal of the language regarding an automatic impact fee. However, language still exists in there that's compliant with the law that would allow us to assess impact fees to Jushi when we can directly connect the impact with the expense. The agreement has been reviewed and approved by Jushi's council, and we sent it off to the Cannabis Control Commission for final review. The Cannabis Control Commission does not weigh in on an HCA until it's submitted as a part of a renewal, and so at the advice of our council, the motion tonight includes a small sentence that says, that would allow me to make non-substantive edits agreeable to the town and Jushi at the suggestion of the Cannabis Control Commission. Essentially, this would just mean if next week they say, this is good, except you have to change this to they instead of them, I wouldn't have to wait for another select board meeting for us to approve it.
Excellent. I will open that up to questions. Select Person Gilfus.
No questions.
Select Person Cohen.
So this host impact fee has been something that we've discussed multiple times. Once the legislature passed this, they guaranteed us 7 years to be able to collect a host impact fee, 7 years. And then 2 or 3 years later, they decided, well, maybe that's a little bit too generous to the towns. I don't know. You have to ask them exactly what they thought. But they basically were threatening to take that away. We worked with our legislatures, Senator Kennedy, Representative Gary. They weren't able to get that through. When we signed the HCA, we did exactly what all the other communities are doing. We actually collected about 6 different HCAs at the time, and each one of them had that. You could have a 3% host impact fee. Clearly, the legislature has decided that that's not, we can't do that anymore. Why they decided that, I'm still a little bit leery, but when it came time for renewal, there's a few things that, when we were in the early stages, as I said, we were on the ground floor when the marijuana industry first got here, and we got our first recreational facility. There's a lot of small things in that were allowed at that point. One was a host impact fee. One that each facility actually had to donate $20,000 to a local charity. They deemed that was unlawful too. So those are the types of things, and many other little things like that we took out. But in no way were we going against the law. As soon as the laws changed, Colin and Matt before him, we've had multiple conversations with our lawyers to make sure that we were doing the right thing. So, I've read over this HCA. I think it does a great job, and as Colin said, Cannabis Control Commission has kind of given us a template of what's legal and what's not legal. So I think they did a good job, and I'm all set with it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Select Person Schneider.
No questions, Mr. Chair.
And I don't have any questions. I think Select Person Cohen outlined everything. We all sit there and wonder why the state, took away some of our autonomy to make our own agreements and some of those things. It certainly is not, it wasn't part of the spirit and intent of what we did initially, and but those are the rules that we're playing by right now. So, I think that this needs to happen, and, I guess I will entertain a motion. Yeah, hang on a second.
Sorry, if I could just ask another question. Is there a threshold for us where just hearing you talk about like the expectations that the town had when we signed this initially, is there a threshold where this no longer becomes an incentive for the town and it's more of a burden, and we would consider no longer being a part of the host community agreement?
Well, so let's be clear. There's actually 2 pieces, right? There was
we still get
excise.
the other,
We're still getting 3%,
Right.
which is
Round 2.
It's around $1.2 million a year. I think that given the partners that we've had with Jushi and what we anticipate at the Yellow House, that they operate well. These are well-run companies. The problems that were predicted in a lot of have not materialized. The issues, as Colin had outlined, and the reason we can't directly tie these to community impact fees is because we really haven't had anything other than traffic issues. And we're mitigating those in a different way. So I think that there are people that I know that told me that we're not in favor of the cannabis when it first went through, even though it had the 3%. And now, even though that this is gone, they agree that it has been good for the town. And so I can't I don't know what's going to happen in the future.
We can't be speculative. Yeah, absolutely.
But as it is now, it's not even, to me, it's a no-brainer.
This isn't the type of thing where like we've lost this 3% and we're like, oh, now we got to, kind of rethink our strategy here. It's still.
Well, to answer your question a little bit more, it also says, and the Cannabis Control Commission also always says that we have to negotiate with them in good faith to have them open. So welcome to town government. The state dictates, and we just have to follow. So even if it would be really tough for us to close them down, unless we have some really, really solid reasons, and we would, we just can't say we don't want you anymore.
Yeah.
We would get sued.
We're not making the money that we thought we would. Yeah, yeah.
And so,
Okay.
so we're always looking at that.
Great.
Okay,
So with that, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the Select Board approve the HCA with Jushi MA Inc. doing business as Nature's Remedy at 420 Middlesex Road and authorize the town manager to make non-substantive edits agreeable to the town and Jushi at the suggestion of the CCC, Cannabis Control Commission.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Carries 4-0-0. Item 8C, review/approve policy for alteration of premises.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a memo in here that Jackie put together for us that summarizes two of the key alcoholic beverages changes that were made recently. I won't talk much about the mixed drinks, except that that extended a temporary provision at the time from COVID era that allows you to sell, an on-premise facility to sell those as like to-go cocktails. What we do need the board to discuss this evening is the new state regulations regarding outdoor patio service. Some of you may remember that in the heat of the pandemic, the state, in an attempt to help businesses and keep people outside, allow the local licensing authorities to make temporary modifications to premises. Previously, if you wanted to add a patio, you had to pay the $200 application fee to the ABCC, submit that application to the local licensing authority, come to the select board for a hearing. We would submit our approval to the ABCC. 6 to 8 weeks later, they may rule on it. It may take longer. What this new law does is says that that power rests solely with the select board. So as long as they have an existing license for the sale of alcoholic beverages on premise, or some of our establishments have just common vics to serve food, that applies too, this board alone can grant the temporary outdoor seating. Also notable is it eliminates the advertisement requirements. It doesn't say you can't implement your own, but it says that the requirement that you do a butters notices and a legal ad are waived. You can start doing this as soon as the board adopts a policy. So what you see before you tonight is a draft policy for your consideration that mirrors almost identically the policy that we used during the COVID era to grant these requests. Key features of it are, we did think it was important for abutters to receive notices when somebody is proposing an outdoor patio, whether it's for alcohol service or just food. In some cases, it seems kind of silly if La Santa, for instance, on Middlesex Road, not really in a neighborhood, wanted outdoor patio service, probably not many people that would be upset. The interesting thing about Tyngsborough, of course, is that we do have some food establishments in thickly settled residential neighborhoods, and so it would be unfair for us to say, well, if you don't have a neighborhood near you, we don't need to do the abutters notice. So the policy would require that they get an abutters notice. There's no fee for this. We're not proposing a fee. They would do the abutters notice on their own, so it's not costing us anything. We would require the approval of the police department, the fire department, the board of health, and the building commissioner. This would ensure that their outdoor service area follows all life safety regulations, health regulations, and a big one, particularly with these outdoor patios, is parking. We learned the hard way during the pandemic that if somebody had just enough parking for the number of seats they have inside, and then they eliminate 10 parking spots because they put a patio outside, they've increased their seating capacity but decreased their parking. That becomes a problem. And then we also put a blanket restriction of outdoor service, which has to end at 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday and 9 p.m. on Sundays. However, this policy allows the board to add further restrictions. So again, if you're in a thickly settled neighborhood, oftentimes those licenses have earlier end times anyway. It still maintains the board's authority. The policy is in here. It's cut and dry, like I said. It mirrors what we did before, and it would apply to any establishment that serves alcohol and food, or just serves food. But if you serve alcohol, this policy notably requires that there also be food service. That's not new. That's a regulation this board adopted, I think, in like the 90s. We've prepared on our website an application that will be live first thing tomorrow morning if the board approves the policy. Again, there's no fee, and all we'd be required to do after you approve it is to send a description of the new premises to the ABCC, so if they were out doing random inspections, they would know that the site is permitted. This would be a one-time application. It would become part of your license, and so every year you'd be renewing the same patio. If you wanted to make alterations, it would come back before the select board.
Great, thank you for that explanation. I will open it up to the board. Select Person Gilfus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, reading through it, like I said before, I'm new to this, and so every new thing is a new thing. So when I was reading through and it said that this would now fall under the jurisdiction of the local licensing authority, I thought, well, that's good for whoever that is. And then 2 pages later, it was like the definition of local licensing authority is the select board. So then I actually went back to the beginning and reread it because I was like, now I have a different responsibility here. I think this makes a lot of sense.
Excellent, thank you. Select Person Cohen.
No questions.
Select Person Schneider.
No questions, Mr. Chair.
I don't have any questions. I think the only thing that's, to be clear for everyone, this is about patio service for food and alcohol. This is not outdoor music and all those things. It doesn't open up everything for those types of situations. I'm sure people will be like, oh, it's just codifying the things that did happen during COVID and some still take advantage of today and enjoy that today. So with that, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the Select Board adopt the outdoor patio policy as presented.
Seconded?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Do we have a different process if someone wanted to do fun and games outside on a patio?
Entertainment, yes. Those are
Yes, that'd be an entertainment license.
So it's just separate or in addition to
And that
their.
policy hasn't changed. That's still governed by state law.
No further questions.
There you go. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carries 400. Item 8D. Yes, Zoning Review Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the board's last meeting, it considered its annual appointments. In doing so, it discussed how the Zoning Review Committee had a charge that originally had their term expire this month. At the suggestion of the board, I met with the Zoning Review Committee last week, and we discussed what work remained for the group. They have limited work left, but they certainly have some work left, and they expect to hopefully be able to present their final recommended changes in time for the October 24 Fall Town Meeting. With that said, to be safe and in case they need to present their recommended changes in May, they suggested having the committee's term be extended by 1 more year so that all of their terms would expire June 30th, 2025. If the board is amenable to extending the term, it will also need to appoint their designee, which is currently Eric Eldridge, for 1 additional year.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
We could nominate somebody else besides you for this too, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
You could.
And I would entertain that.
There's no way I'm going to,
Oh.
but I just wanted to just make
You
sure.
just
The way
wanted-
it was written, it sounded like we had to do this.
You wanted to lift my hopes up.
There's
No.
a line there, it's a blank line.
I will be honest, we've done a lot of things with zoning review. Colin and I have had the discussion as well. There's a lot of things that happen. I think from a continuity standpoint, while I would certainly, if anybody really wants to jump in, I think that there's a lot of, there would be some continuity. I am certainly willing to continue on the zoning review committee. And so I will leave it at that. I will open up to any other questions or comments on this one.
No, I've said enough.
Thank you so much. So I will entertain a motion on this one.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Select Board amend the charge of the Zoning Review Committee by extending the committee's term to June 30th, 2025, and that Select Board appoint Eric Eldridge as their representative.
Seconded.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carries 400.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I do like working with the folks. Just, it
They've
is
done a
quite
lot
a
of
bit of
good
stuff.
work. They've done a
Yeah.
lot of good work.
I think we had, 14 or 15 zoning bylaw changes
It's a lot.
in the last 3 years, and
Our lawyers were amazed that we were able to get that many and get them through. The
That's a-
residents were really understood, what they were.
I think that's a
Effective.
testament to the committee and the work that they've done.
Absolutely.
There's some really good folks.
Totally agree.
8E, donations.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to share that there are 2 donations that we're seeking the Select Board's acceptance of this evening. First, as I mentioned in my town manager's report last meeting, the Lake Muscoppic Association has once again donated a boat to the Tyngsborough Police Department to patrol mainly the waters of Lake Muscoppic, but certainly it could be used on other bodies of water in town. We have plenty. They donated a similar boat in 2021, and the department has sent multiple officers to training, and at least 2 have received the certifications required to earn patrol endorsements from the environmental police. The original boat is not operating as well as it should, and so they donated this new one The new boat is lettered, registered, and ready to go. I believe it might have been out on the water this past weekend. Secondly, Ed Smith had a golf cart donated to the town for use as a maintenance cart at the new Sherburne Ave Rec Center on the parcel of land that was donated by the Toll Brothers. The golf cart was donated by David Friel, who's the owner of Friel Golf Management and owns and operates many local golf courses, including, I think, Green Meadow. Ed has been involved in the design of the project from the beginning, and we appreciate his enthusiasm for making this parcel the best it can be. Ed's the kind of person who sees a need and shows up the next day with the solution to that need, whether you were expecting it or not. State law requires that the Select Board formally accept all donations, and that is what we are seeking tonight.
I will open it up to questions. Select Person Gilfus.
This is just very generous of both organizations, and I'm appreciative of that. No questions.
Select Person Cohen.
I just want to thank Ed for his commitment to everything that he's done. Again, Lake Muscuppick Association to help out Lake Muscuppick. Clearly, the Sherburne Ave Committee, where we're going to put a recreational facility, and Ed saw the need for have a golf cart there, and he made it happen. Somehow, he just makes things happen. So hopefully we can send a thank you letter to Ed and to David Friel for the golf cart. And I have no questions, except this will be great additions to what we really need.
Yeah, Colin, can you make sure that we draft up a letter to both the Lake Muscuppick Association and David Friel, and we can formally thank Ed as well.
You talk to him enough, you can just thank him anytime you talk to him.
You can thank him in
I'll
person,
talk to him.
or we will. Mr. Schneider.
Yeah, I just think that, echoing what the other select members have said, that, the police in particular, I'm sure, are extremely grateful for receiving that new boat. It's going to be put to great use. The golf cart's similar. I'm sure we'll get lots of use. So thank you for the, Lake Muscuppick Association, for Ed, for David Friel, for all of them for getting this done. It'll certainly be well used by everyone in town.
Yeah, and just to echo that, and I think that boat safety is big.
Yeah.
This time of year, you hear all sorts of things that are happening, and I think the people that get to enjoy the lakes appreciate that this is available to them, because I know that water safety can be very, very difficult when there's a lot of things that are happening, and having a police presence there is critical for citizens. So again, thank you, just to echo that. With that, I will entertain a motion.
I move the Select Board accept the donation of a boat from the Lake Muscuppick Association and a golf cart from Ed Smith.
Second.
Motion and a second.
A short one, Ron.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That carries 4-0. Next one is surplus auction.
Yes, thank you. In our last agenda item, the Select Board voted to accept the donation of a new police boat courtesy of the Lake Muscuppick Association. As I indicated, they had originally donated a boat back in 2021. That boat is no longer operating to our satisfaction, and so they donated a new one. As a part of the donation agreement, we've agreed to surplus auction the old boat and return whatever proceeds that we get to the Lake Muscuppick Association. This is a slightly unique situation in that we didn't really own the boat until we accepted the donation, but now we own the boat, and so the Lake Muscuppick Association can't just sell the boat to reimburse themselves. We have to do it. And under Massachusetts procurement laws, before we surplus auction something, this board has to formally vote to surplus auction it. So if you approve this evening, we'll launch the surplus auction on Monday, July 1st. We use an online platform called Municibid. We've had great success in the past. And the highest bid as of Wednesday, July 10th, will get the boat. We will take care of the paperwork, and then we'll reimburse the Lake Muscuppick Association for the proceeds.
Thank you for that explanation. Open up for discussion. Select Person Gilfus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does this work like eBay, where there's like a minimum bid that we will accept?
Yes.
How nice.
We've sold fire engines. This is a side story, but I just have to share it. We sold a fire engine 2 years ago. It was a 1998 or 97. We had no use for it. We sold it to these two guys from Malden who rebuilt the engine and got it running. And like 2 weeks later, I was driving through Malden, and they whizzed by me in this old town of Tyngsborough fire truck.
They're just cruising in it. It's theirs on the
Cruising in
road.
it.
They just,
I've seen it multiple times since. They've got it running. But yes, it's the same thing. We have a minimum bid. They pay us. We don't accept money through Municipal. They pay us a cash, but they do a deposit on there so that we're protected.
municipal.
The things you can find.
I love this.
Yes. And it costs us nothing.
There's a shoe for every foot.
It sure is.
I love it.
Select Person Cohen.
The only thing, I'm looking at the motion here, should I also add that we will return the proceeds to the Lake Muscoppic Association as part of the motion?
It's not necessary. Your authority tonight is just to surplus the boat.
So
By law, we have
Then whose
to.
authority is it to return the money to Lake? Does that, still the board's?
I entered into an agreement with them for the donation.
Okay, so we're all
So I
set
think
with
we're
that.
covered. Yeah,
It goes into Colin's pocket first and then
correct.
comes
And then
out.
I give them a fee.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, my only question is, we note that the boat is not operating as well as it should. Is there any potential legal liability to us to sell a boat that is not operating as well as it should?
The boat floats, it stays afloat, and we sell everything as is.
Okay.
It's up to the buyer to,
We don't make any representations?
we make no
that it's safe?
representations. We'll make it available at the highway department so people can come physically look at it, but you buy these things as is.
Okay, thank you.
That's nice that we make it available.
Yeah, of course.
And to be clear, the boat works, but the police have a slightly higher need relative to that than someone else might, and who may be buying it to fix it up with the engine. Didn't meet our needs, let's surplus it. So with that, I will entertain a motion.
I move the select board authorize a surplus auction for the PD boat as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Carries 400. Sherburne Road Open Space.
All right, this is a long one. As the board will remember, in March, it reviewed a deed that was offered to the town from Toll Brothers for the acceptance of the 30 or so acres of land that they committed to donating to the town as a part of their development agreement for the former Tyngsborough Country Club. Since then, the town has allocated $800,000 in CPC funds for the installation of various recreation amenities on the site, and work using these funds the bids will come back on Wednesday. We hope to award a contract at some point early next week. At the board's meeting in March, it voted to confirm that the deed was acceptable to the town after legal review by council, and that the conditions of the development agreement and zoning review decision as it related to the site improvements had been done to our satisfaction. This vote advanced the issue to the May 7th town meeting, where town meeting unanimously voted to authorize the select board to accept the land. While the planning board and the Toll Brothers work to address what the planning board has identified as water issues on the development side of the parcel, the select board proactively entered into an agreement with the Toll Brothers that requires that they install an underground drainage structure on the donated parcel of land at their expense, and that they seek an amendment to their stormwater permit from the Conservation Commission and record an amended permit that would place the maintenance of those structures under the responsibility of the homeowners association in perpetuity. They have also provided the town with the required bond to ensure the work is done correctly. The structure that we're talking about, which was approved by our town engineer and also reviewed by the planning board's peer review engineer, is planned for a section of land that is not currently being utilized for the phase of work that we're going to award later this week. Whether the water issues on the other side continue, our opinion and the opinion of our engineer is that this structure will at the very least help control groundwater runoff that would have otherwise been on the donated parcel of land, as well as stormwater runoff from Sherburne Road, unrelated to the development. Ahead of your last meeting, I did speak to a few members of the planning board who have continued concerns that if the structures were installed before the planning board was satisfied that the development side water issues were resolved, these new structures could potentially act as a redirection of their water, and we wouldn't know. To that end, and after speaking with Toll Brothers, I'm recommending that the select board amend the agreement with Toll Brothers to push the deadline for them to install the structures back to October 1st. This would allow the Toll Brothers to finish out the process with the planning board and hopefully satisfy the concerns of the planning board. Because this work is not being done in any area that we have plans for today, there's certainly no impact from our perspective on waiting. Our engineering department and the planning board's peer review engineer agreed that there's no downside to the town allowing these structures to be installed, regardless of what happens on the Toll Brothers side. As has been mentioned time and time again, there's nothing that this board could do that would eliminate the regulatory authority that lies by statute with the planning board and the Conservation Commission. All of that said, and since the town is on track to begin construction early this summer and to award a contract on Wednesday when bids are due, I'm asking that the Select Board tonight vote to formally record this deed with the North Middlesex Registry of Deeds, and of course to amend the agreement with Toll Brothers, pushing the deadline for those structures to October 1st.
You're right, that was a lot.
And I have 2 motions in there.
Yes, so let me first say thank you, because at our last meeting, we said, let's button these things up, let's make sure we've addressed some of those. They appear to all be addressed here, you know, in going through some of these and then some. So I appreciate you doing that and bringing this here, as we had asked for. From a procedural standpoint, are we doing this as 2 separate motions and acceptance, and then, or do you want them read together?
I would appreciate 2 separate motions.
That's what I thought, just wanted to make sure. And with that, I will open it up to the board for discussions, starting with Select Person Gilfus.
Yeah, I think just the one thing that I'm not quite clear about is pushing the deadline for the installation to October 1st. That's not a fully formed question, but just like,
Why?
well, yeah, and like, that feels so far from now.
So part of the original agreement required the work be done by July 1st, where running up against it probably wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
What the planning board is concerned about is they've identified some serious water issues on the other side. And they've spent the better part of a year and a half working with Toll Brothers to identify potential solutions. In the wintertime, we often see flooding across the road, which freezes and creates hazardous conditions. What the planning board is most concerned about is that they install these drainage structures on our side first, and we don't know it until it happens, but now all the water that was on their side is going under the road, making it look like it's resolved, but it's now flooding out the town parcel. If we've taken ownership of it, we're stuck with it. By pushing it to October 1st, that will give Toll Brothers, they've identified, for instance, one of their next items is to install skirts in the water main trenches that go up the development, because they believe that some of the groundwater and potentially a limited amount of stormwater is following the trenches where the water pipes are down to the road and creating the flooding. So the planning board is hoping that by us extending this and them not doing anything to that side yet, they'll be able to say firmly that whatever actions Toll Brother takes on their side either did or did not work. Whereas if they've installed these structures on our side, it's very possible that all they're doing is redirecting their water, which would end up becoming our problem.
Thank you. So the way that it's written, we are giving them until October 1st to make sure that that's done. Are we accepting the land contingent on that, or are we accepting it now?
We're accepting it now, but you already have an agreement that says they have to do it. One of the things that I should note is that we see this from the town's perspective. These underground structures, whether there are water issues on the other side or not, have no harm for us. We have the deed, as you see in the packet, is specifically for open space and recreation. The town could not, without going through really serious hurdles, and I'm not even sure legally how you could do it, decide tomorrow that instead you want to build a public safety building there. If there were potential development plans for the site, we'd say, well, maybe we don't want to commit to underground structures. In this case, it is our firm belief that whether we put the structures there or not, that parcel is ready for us to take it. These would just act as an additional source or additional destination for unwanted stormwater. But we are cognizant of the fact that the planning board is not satisfied with the resolution on the other side. And so we're really just saying, look, these aren't required for us to take the land. They'd be great to have them. But I guess it is possible that something magical happens on the other side that satisfies the planning board's concern, and we don't see any water runoff, and we may say, you know what, we don't need you to do it. But the town is certainly protected in that if you accept it tonight, there is still a binding legal agreement with them, plus a bond that would make them install them.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Select Person Cohen.
The old Tyngsborough Golf Course. We've been through a lot, getting through to this point, And first of all, I'd like to thank, the planning board, the zoning board, of course, the residents, and the select board. This really was, kind of a team effort to kind of get to this point. There was development agreements, there was agreements between the planning board, of course, and the, and Toll Brothers and zoning. I mean, so many people were involved, and took a lot of iterations to get to this point. And we're really at the point where this is kind of the last thing that we need to do in order to accept 30 acres. You know, the history of this is, you know, we went to town meeting, I think, at least 3 times, trying to buy the whole thing. You know, the goal for some people was to continue this as a golf course. I would have loved it to be a golf course. I mean, that's where I played golf. I played for 2 full years, you know, at that golf course. But it just didn't make sense from a town perspective, I felt, to do this. You know, the things that we've learned, you know, since that time also is that, you know, the clubhouse had mold throughout it. If we would have purchased that, we would have had to put, you know, new bathrooms in there, make it accessible. We would have seen the mold, and we would have had to take appropriate action. Toll Brothers spent $500,000 fixing up that building. It would have cost us a lot more with prevailing wage and everything. We've also learned that the watering system for the 9 holes was not going to make it. It was in tough shape, and it would have probably had to be replaced or significantly upgraded somehow. So for people that wish we would have bought it and remained a golf course, that wasn't going to happen. We weren't going to spend, you know, that amount of money to continue it as a golf course. You know, I do remember at the end of one of the town meetings, a resident came up to me and said, you know, I know this failed, but is there any way we can get the land between Sherburne and the river? Is there any way that could possibly happen? I said, yeah, there could be a way of doing it. I don't know what it is right now. And it took a while for us to get to this point, you know, but luckily that's what we got. So we have, you know, just so everybody's clear, over 30 acres have been donated to the town. It didn't cost us anything. What did we get out of it? Besides the 30 acres, we got a clubhouse that Toll Brothers put $500,000 into. It's like a new building. They brought it right down to the studs and built it right back up. So it's almost like we have a new building. They put in a parking lot. They put in a driveway. They put in walking paths. You know, and, you know, is there anything else? Oh, they fixed the drainage issue also, you know, with the driveway coming up from Pawtucket to the driveway, there was a water issue, they fixed that. So we had a lot of different things that we had in the agreement for them to fix, and they've done all of that. This water issue, really what this is, you know, this isn't gonna be where the recreational facilities is. The only thing it would probably inhibit might be the walking path, but our engineer has really looked at this and thought that the underground water would be an acceptable solution, whatever structure that is. And I don't know if Colin mentioned this, but the association, the condo association also is responsible for maintaining that even. So I think this is the best possible deal we could have gotten. It's taken us a long time, a lot of town meetings, a lot of people were emotional about this particular issue, and, you know, I'm glad with the final result. I think it was the best we could do. And then when people see the recreational facility that we're about ready to put in there, as Colin said, it's out to bid right now, people will be ecstatic that this is the end result. That's all I have.
Thank you. Select Person Schneider.
I guess I have a couple of questions. One, the bond that they posted, are we confident that there's enough money there to make any alterations to these structures if those are required?
The bond is to ensure that they install the structures. We don't have a bond for once it's installed, so the only way we'd be able to redeem that bond is if they completely walked away from our agreement and then we had to install the structures on our own. Mm-hmm. By way of the stormwater permit, legally, it would be the homeowners association. Admittedly, we don't have a bond from them. We typically wouldn't. We would have to take action against them if we needed to make any changes.
Okay. And the structures as they exist now, are they just merely taking the water from one side of the street and dumping it onto the other side from underneath?
So that's a great question. There is currently and has always been a culvert under the road. The structures that we're talking about would be separate and apart from that, and are not intended to be a receiving bucket, if you will, for the water coming from the Toll Brothers side. they would be more to deal with stormwater from on our side. Naturally, if you look at that, that parcel of land, it's low-lying. In any rain event, there is stormwater. This would help with that. We did not accept any proposal whereby all the water would come and be stored on our side. But there is, the way the road slopes, certainly we could expect some stormwater,
Yeah.
but it was never intended to be, nor is it proposed to be, a catch basin, if you will, for that water. And that's one of the reasons why the planning board felt strongly about delaying the installation, so that they could truly see if the efforts being taken by Toll Brothers on their side are sufficient or not.
Okay. And I guess, and then the last just comment or question I would have, when that used to be the front nine, there was a pond over at one of the tee boxes. Is there a way to direct the water to that sort of man-made pond so that it doesn't flood the walking paths in the event there's
Too
a lot of storm water?
Too far away.
Is it too far? Yeah?
Yeah, it's way too
It's
far
uphill
away.
from there.
And, as Colin said, it was a structure underneath Sherburne that we never saw or didn't know it was there. Actually, I was on site when we saw the water going through and we started digging, we found it, It was kind of like,
Okay.
but I think this is a good solution. And as Colin said, the planning board still has jurisdiction into making sure this happens.
Okay.
So there's nothing that we're doing here where we're inhibiting their jurisdiction of what they're responsible for.
All right, no further
And
questions.
conservation, by that matter.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate the history. I think it's important for residents some that might be new to some of those things. There have been a lot of things. I do think that at the end of the day, this is making the best out of the situation. I too like golf. I may or may not have played today. But I think that through a lot of hard work from a lot of people, this is going to be a fantastic 30-acre parcel of land for great recreational use by the town, the townspeople. This is not for the Toll Brothers. They have their own facilities. This is for the townspeople and to enjoy in a variety of ways, both active and passive recreation. I think that the planning board has done a good job of keeping an eye on what is happening, where the construction is, and to protect, not only our parcel of land there, but, for abutting residents and dealing with the roads and all of that. So I think we're at the point, Colin and I have gone back and forth on a bunch of these things to make sure that these are addressed. I think the time is right. I think this is, we've been told by town meeting, let's accept the property, let's move. This is the time to do it. So I'm totally in favor of both of these activities happening. So with that, I will entertain the first motion.
I move that the select board amend the agreement with Toll Brothers by pushing the deadline to install underground drainage structures to October 1st and authorize the town manager to sign the amendment on its behalf.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Carries 4-0-0. And a second motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the select board accept the 30-acre parcel of land donated by Toll Brothers and record the aforementioned deed with the registry, formally taking ownership of the parcel, which by deed is restricted for open space and recreation.
Second?
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That carries 4-0-0.
Nice work, team.
H, review and approve contract with Comcast.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to actually move this one to your next meeting. We are at a copy of the draft agreement is included here. The only thing that we're going back on, or not going back on, that we've requested a minor change is that the current agreement is a 10-year agreement, which is great for us. That guarantees these rates for 10 years. One of the things, though, is it doesn't allow us to have an HD channel. And so we've gone back to their council and said, hey, 10 years without an HD channel is a little bit of a big commitment. Can we add some language about potentially including it? We also noticed in doing this that we hadn't updated our drop list. We get free Comcast at our municipal buildings. We hadn't updated the list of those buildings in quite some time. So we've landed at a place that I think it's going to stay at. It's just those two lingering items, so I'll ask for your formal approval at your next meeting.
I have no concern in pushing it. I appreciate we're addressing those issues. Those details are important. So with that, I guess we'll go to old business. If we want to start with 9A, discuss, finalize fiscal year 25 goals.
Okay. So the list is included in your packet, and many of you have provided feedback for this. A lot of these are carryovers, or not necessarily direct carryovers, but maybe goals that started in fiscal 24 where partially were completed, so we carried the remainder over. And on a lot of these, I tried to add some clear upcoming items. Generally, these came from the update that I gave in April to your fiscal year 24 goals. So I don't know, Mr. Chair, if you wanted me to go through each one individually.
So I guess the question for the board is, we've gone through these a few times. We've had them, people have added to them. At what level of detail would you like to? My recommendation is that, Colin, if you can just outline high level what each one of them is.
Sure.
And then if there are questions, then we'll entertain those. But having you read through all the things, I don't know that there's a ton of benefit in that.
Perfect, then I'm happy to give a quick overview.
Everybody good with that? Let me make sure that I'm seeing nodding heads.
Yeah, and, just to be clear, these are the goals that we have right now. We can always add goals to this later on. This is just to kind of give, mostly Colin and the select board a good idea of where we're at today. But at any time, we can add, delete, or modify, any of these.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, so the first one deals with our town-owned land and buildings. This is something that we've talked about for a number of years. This goal talks about not just our physical buildings, which is something that we've had a renewed push to identify how to best maintain them. A great example, of course, is the work we're doing on the police and fire departments, which I expect to have a presentation at some point in July for you. But also thinking about the land that we own. Obviously, we're putting a ton of money and time into the Sherburne Road open space parcel. We've recently gotten very close to finishing, formally taking the Shady Glade parcel. There's a lot of places that the town owns that I think we've owned and haven't come up with a comprehensive plan. Convenient timing, the Department of Public Works includes facilities, and so we've started to talk about what that might look like. But this will help us develop long-term plans for all of these buildings to make sure that we're investing in them and we don't find ourselves 5 or 10 years from now with a building that doesn't work anymore with no plan for it. The second goal is to develop a 5-year plan for staffing, services, equipment, and infrastructure for each department with a specific focus on police and fire. This is something that is an ongoing effort, but I think both of our public safety chiefs understand a real focus for the coming year. Our fire chief has started this work, and our police department often is part of this conversation as well. And this calls out those two as there are two biggest budget centers, if you will, on the general government side, but certainly this is something that we have to think about across the organization. There's a separate goal further down that talks about the newly formed DPW, which is going to be another area of focus for us. This is a goal that has been on, number 3 is a goal that's been on here for as long as I've worked for the town, and it's certainly something that we can continue to work on, and that deals with communication. Making sure that people truly understand how their taxes are calculated and assessed. More pie charts is what I hear is the best way to communicate that. Providing a clear understanding of where the revenue is generated and where the tax money is from. Again, we asked town meeting to approve a $48 million budget, and oftentimes that article is passed in 3 or 4 minutes. And so it's on our responsibility to make sure that people fully understand what it is they're really voting on. I think our budget office hours we did this year were a great way to start that conversation, but there's certainly a better way for us to get directly to people in a convenient manner. And that's the same for our general government spending, our schools, public safety, and of course the issue everyone loves to talk about, which is roads.
Yeah, the only thing to add on this, and I'd like to see it, I don't think we got it done last year, but in this one, how your taxes are done, I'd like to maybe work with the assessor's office, and if we can come up with a quick video. I've said I'll give you my tax bill and say, this is what you got here, and this is where it comes from.
Roni left, and so I feel comfortable violating his embargo, but that is an upcoming episode on the Entering Tyngsborough podcast.
Perfect.
Don't tell Roni I told you.
Okay.
Secret is safe with
But I
us.
think
Yeah.
that's the one that comes up all the time. People are like,
Yeah.
He will.
oh, my.
Well, especially we did switch to Munis for
Yes.
billing, and immediately people had questions. It shows up differently, and helping people understand those different elements will be very important.
And that's the type of stuff that, I see here in this goal. It's little things that I think will make a difference. So thank you.
Also, something that came up with some residents recently is just the difference between how renters contribute to tax income. And so maybe just calling out something specifically about the experience for renters.
Absolutely. Goal number 4 deals with improving operational efficiencies in departments and effectively accounting for costs and non-tax revenues. This is something that I'm particularly interested in. As this board knows, the most recent collective bargaining agreement with our department heads includes performance evaluations for the first time in quite some time. And so as a part of that, we were planning with our HR department to do a strategic planning retreat for our department heads this summer, which will really focus on how can we make the department run even better than it is. All of our departments run tremendously. I'd put them up against other municipalities any day, but certainly there are places for us to make improvements. The other area that will help with this is we've already begun the process of looking at job descriptions. Last year, we had the infamous Collins Center report, which did 2 things. Everyone talked about the compensation study that it did, but on top of that, it worked with department heads and individual staff, as well as administration, to say what was the old job description. Many of our jobs here haven't had updated descriptions in 15 or 20 years. And so we now have a starting point to sit down with every department, go individual by individual to make sure that we are getting the most out of every employee, that nobody's duplicating efforts, and that these job descriptions truly reflect the work they're doing, which will help us really make sure that we're maximizing our greatest asset, which is our people.
That should also help with, it's not just getting the most out of them, it's how to helping them achieve, their goals, right? Where can they develop and what areas do they have opportunities? So it is framing it around that. I think there are some people that spend time working on things that isn't in their job description, or they think it's really important for their job, but it really isn't. And there are other things that might be better for them, so that we can attract and retain people, better and make sure that they put in a lot of time. They should enjoy what they're doing, and it should be fulfilling, and there's ample opportunity on a lot of those. So I think this is really good.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, one more thing. So the improve operational efficiencies is really the first 3 words in this one. And I know the residents have heard this board talk a lot about operational efficiencies. Last year we had a goal, and we, through 2 particular projects, we're going to save $100,000 on an annual basis every single year. The one thing that we wanted to kind of highlight in this one is, we've done a lot for operational efficiencies. The residents have given us some ideas about operational efficiencies that we've actually implemented. I don't know if we've actually really talked or asked each department head to give their take on what they feel operational efficiencies they could attain. So that's what in this upcoming, number 1 here, it says, when Colin says that he's gonna do the strategic planning, he's gonna ask all the department heads, do you have any ideas about operational efficiencies within your department? Who should know better than the people that are running the department? And there may be some things there that we can work on, to create even more efficiencies. But I love that particular goal.
Great point, thank you. Go ahead.
No, to follow on with Mr. Cohen's comment, I agree, having the department heads get together. I'm hoping this includes the school department heads also, because there are assets and things that they have that perhaps the rest of the town can leverage, And so when we talk about redundancies, we're going to make sure that we include the schools within that discussion and see, do they have copiers? Do they have, whatever, I don't know, whatever, but do they have assets or functions that can eliminate redundancies in other parts of the town?
Absolutely.
So that they're not a separate silo from everything else.
Very good point.
Very good point.
All right, item 5 is to create a process for an annual 5-year budget forecast that looks at projected expenses and revenues. As a part of this process, continuing to constantly look at alternative revenue sources for things like our long-term capital planning. I know Mr. Eldridge talked about this, and we've all talked about how ARPA was kind of what we used to fund capital for the last couple of years. Well, ARPA's gone, and so now we're back at free cash and borrowing, but certainly making sure that we've looked at all of those options. And as a part of that, focusing on projected expenses with benchmark data from other communities, again, to make sure that Tyngsborough's spending practices are in line with our peers. We did half of that this year by showing where within the different buckets of money we're spending, but certainly for the next budget cycle, making sure that we say, okay, well, Tyngsborough spends X% on public safety. How does that compare to our neighbor communities? And then also making sure that we've developed a very specific scenario-driven approach for short-term and long-term debt. Words are hard for me tonight. Create an economic development strategy with input from the planning board and relevant stakeholders, which may include the reestablishment of an economic development commission or business association to further improve economic development of the town. Currently, our biggest hurdle to that is hiring a new town planner / economic development director, which I think we're getting close on. But that's something, when we talk about revenue, we need to continue to reasonably and responsibly grow our tax base, and we can't always look just to residents for that. Certainly bringing in new types of businesses is helpful. Continue to plan for affordable housing, most specifically by reviewing and updating the 2020-2024 housing production plan. That work has commenced. NIMCOG, we were awarded a grant to have NIMCOG help us, and that will certainly involve input from the Select Board, the Planning Board, the Affordable Housing Trust, and the community. One that I'm particularly excited about is monitoring the plans for the extension of the commuter rail from Lowell to Nashua and explore ways to leverage the proposed expansion to benefit Tyngsborough. This is like, commuter rail extension to Nashua is like this unicorn that everybody keeps talking about. It dies, it comes back, and it dies again. The promising news is that Congresswoman Trahan's office notified us not too long ago that Congresswoman, is it Cluster or Custer, from New Hampshire, I guess is not seeking re-election, but one of the big things that she wanted to push through before she ended was really getting the conversation started again. So Congresswoman Trahan's office and I had a lengthy conversation about, did it make sense for Tyngsborough and what are some things we want to see happen? Over the weekend, I heard from the Economic Development Director in Nashua that they're looking to sit down and meet so we can talk about how that would work. So this is an exciting one that I think could have, benefits to some of the other goals within here. Item 9 calls out something we talked about in other items, but specifically focuses on the newly established Department of Public Works, and that's looking at a 5-year strategic plan, specifically focusing on what are our capital needs, staffing needs, and budget needs. We know that for the next 2 to 5 years, it's going to be kind of that building the Department of Public Works up from the ground. Jake has hit the ball running, the sewer department, the highway department, the cemetery folks, everyone's been very supportive of the work. And I'm confident that we'll be able to move this along quickly, but certainly it'll be helpful to have a plan for what it ultimately becomes.
Could I, this is a formatting question. Could we format 9 to be similar to 2 or vice versa?
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks.
Item 10 is having identified feasible options for the development of solar resources on town-owned property, issue an RFP to work with qualified firms to develop a solar lease on Town Hall and the Council on Aging, and prepare options for further development. One of the things that we've spent the spring working on is figuring out where we can put solar. We know we can easily do it here at Town Hall and at the Council on Aging, and I expect at your July 8th meeting to get feedback from you about what it is the board is comfortable doing. Are you only comfortable committing the roofs at each of those buildings? Are you interested in exploring what they call solar canopies, which are essentially, like covered parking spots, which would work well in a portion of the Council on Aging parking lot. It would work well in a portion of the parking lot here, but it'll be gauging what your interests are so that when we put out an RFP this summer, we know what the limits of your interest are as the folks that have authority over those parcels. Item 11 deals with reviewing to determine if Tyngsborough should have a representative on the Drake Water District Board of Commissioners, and if all Drake Water District customers should be allowed to vote for the Water District Board. Also, to review current water supply offerings to determine if they'll meet the town's long-term needs. This is kind of an ongoing discussion. Select Person Eldridge and I have had several conversations with the Water District. Just today, we sent a draft agreement for their review, dealing with our regular relationship, not anything yet relative to the system development fee. And our Board of Health has been very involved in conversations with Tyngsborough residents and the Water District about water supply, particularly around Lake Muscuppick. Those were all built to be 3-season camps. The pipes are dramatically undersized, and so there are 3 or 4 streets where water is just very hard to come by, and Drake Water is working on fixing that. But certainly, this board and our town facility, our town government have a role to play in that. And I think it's just a matter of figuring out what that relationship is, which we're on good track to do. Continue to pursue state and federal grant opportunities and increase guidance, training, and resources to staff to reduce time spent on applications and improve the likelihood of success. I will note that ahead of this meeting, I checked our fiscal 25 grant commitments so far. We haven't even actually started fiscal 25, and we're already just shy of $800,000 in grants. So it is a regular part of the work that our staff do, and we are constantly looking at ways to streamline it. Some of it is just the way that the state operates. It's not super efficient. They launched the one-stop grant application 2 years ago, which is very efficient because you say, here are my projects, and they try to fit your requests to grants that work best. But one of the things that we need to work on is working with our state and federal partners to identify a path forward for larger scale grants to help develop a public safety building, for instance, or other municipal buildings, with the exception of schools, which obviously is currently funded by the MSBA. Senator Kennedy has filed 2 years in a row now a bill that would establish something similar to the MSBA, but for public safety buildings. It hasn't gained any traction just yet, but certainly we are one of 351 cities and towns that struggles to finance public safety projects. And I should note that when Congresswoman Trahan was here, that conversation came up between members of the board and the Congresswoman about how the federal government has all this infrastructure money. Some of that could be used on critical public safety infrastructure. Develop a personnel recruitment and retention strategy for HR and administration, and also to ensure that our departments are doing succession planning, not just for major leadership roles, but really for all of our departments. Work has already started on the personnel recruitment and retention. I think that the contracts we've settled with our collective bargaining units are reflective of that. But certainly we have work to do in making sure that there is a clear succession plan, not necessarily saying that Bob Smith will take over the role, but making sure that the leaders in these organizations, in these different departments, know how they should be making sure that folks that work under them are prepared for the inevitability that staff turnover.
I think that one would dovetail nicely with when you have your department meeting, talking about efficiencies and whatnot. That would be a time to bring up succession planning also.
Absolutely.
And let the departments sort of leverage off each other how that succession planning might look.
Yeah, certainly. Item 14, using the report produced by LaValle Brenzinger, which this board will see probably at your second July meeting, which analyzed the current needs of the fire and police departments, as well as performed a capital needs assessment on their facilities, identify parcels of land that are suitable for one or both of the buildings, and develop a short-term 5-year capital plan for each building. I don't need to remind the board, for years we stopped putting substantial money into those buildings with the thought that at some point we'd have a combined public safety building project. Finances are finances, and we haven't gotten to that point. And so really what we asked this firm to do was say, okay, we've neglected the buildings for long enough, but we certainly need to keep using them. What do we actually need to do? Give us an order of magnitude cost estimate. But also, while you're here, what should our department sizes be? And use that as a framework to say, which was one of the goals of the Public Safety Building Committee before they dissolved, was to identify parcels of land we could start working toward either acquiring, or if we own them, identifying them as places that we could put a public safety building. And then finally, and this kind of talks about, this is kind of into the efficiencies conversation as well, but it's a little bit more specific. That's given recent inquiries into regional shared service opportunities, including the active regional health initiative, analyze the pros and cons of regional services, and assess opportunities as they arise. You know, the regional health initiative is a great example that was launched by the state as a grant program to get municipalities to share health resources. We just signed our a contract for the 4th year. It's funded 3 full-time positions just here in Tyngsborough, 2 full-time positions in another community. It's allowed us to expand our offerings. At the same time, we know that Drake and Westford are interested in looking at regional veteran services. It's in the early stages of the conversation. We've been talking to Pepperell about doing a temporary regional agreement to help them with building commissioner services if their override tonight doesn't pass. We know that as more and more of our neighbors are facing these financial challenges, that if we have people that are doing the same work and they have people that are doing the same work, there are likely ways that we can work together to make these services much more efficient for everybody, but also more cost effective, because the money is not growing on trees, but we still are having to deliver the same level of services. And I think that's it.
It's quite a bit. There's a lot of stuff that's there. I think one of the things that we can look at, I think what you were talking about around formatting, we might be able to group some of these together, right? There's some things that they're common, and we can change the numbers and how we do some of that. But I guess I'd like to open it up to the board. Are there, are there any items that you feel are missing? Hopefully we've already identified those. We've gone through this. The other is, do you feel that this is the right amount? Are these the right things? Because there's a lot of stuff that's here. Sometimes we're aggressive and we put a lot of things on there. Or, you know, does it feel like it's a good mix? So I'll open up to Select Person Gilfus. And
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only one that I was trying to articulate that maybe I wanted to add, which I couldn't articulate, was just conversations about reliable infrastructure and utility services. And certainly some of this, we talk about water supply here, but like reading the recent report in The Sun about the wastewater and like how that affects our community really got me sort of thinking about that. And then there was a conversation on a Facebook group for town about recent power outages, and it was interesting to see the conversation. Some people were very clear that that's not the responsibility of the town to solve for, where other people offered perhaps valid recommendations or things that we could you know, leverage our relationships with other organizations like National Grid. So again, I don't really have an articulated goal, but just thinking about the utilities that residents rely on and understanding how we can contribute to the success of those services.
I think that's good. I know we haven't had it as a goal. I know that actually it was before you were here probably. We had the plan. We had National Grid scheduled to come in and talk to us about some of that. That didn't happen because of some challenges on their end, scheduling, but the bottom line is, while residents and the town isn't responsible for that infrastructure, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be sitting there saying, hey, what are we doing to help the reliability of those types of things? Similar to what we're doing with, you know, with water, right? Looking at some of those and saying, how do we ensure proper, you know, the proper core services that aren't done by the town? I think that's
exactly
that's what you're saying.
Yep, thank you.
I think that's a fantastic goal. What comes to mind is that I think in years past, municipalities have always taken the approach of, well, your relationship with National Grid is a private customer, you know, provider relationship. But what we do know is that when we start asking questions of National Grid, typically we get a much better, and I'm not picking on National Grid for any reason other than they deliver both utilities in town. We get a much better response. Over the winter, a great example is when there was all the generator issues at the Windermere Circle development behind the Council on Aging. They tried getting answers. They couldn't. Chief Russell got involved, and our municipal manager, Curtis Davis, who's extremely responsive, had several community meetings set up. They had National Grid out there. So while, you know, to both of your points, while we certainly have no control over the utilities, we certainly have a little more weight when it comes to getting them to the table, because they'll come looking for things from us like poll petitions or their tree cutting. And we certainly know you know, the difficult part about National Grid, particularly on the electric front, and I was just talking to Chief Russell about this, is a lot of the issues we experience during a power outage are not because of any of their infrastructure here in Tyngsborough. It's actually on the Westford side, which then feeds that transformer on Middlesex Road, and so it's never making it here. But we talk about regional, there are certainly ways that collectively we can work with National Grid to make sure they're investing in the right places.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
So,
please.
you know, we had them in years ago when the west side of town was having severe power outages and for 3-4 days at a time. And we brought National Grid in here a few times, and they finally did decide to do a tree cutting and a little bit some upgrades in Westford also, which did significantly reduce you know, their outages. And as Colin will tell you, I just sent them an email this morning saying, National Grid said they were gonna come in at some point. You know, I know they said they didn't have time you know, but I think it's time now, especially over the last few weeks. There's been a lot of outages.
Yeah.
And that was what came up,
They should have that data
yeah.
too, you know, they should have that data, you know, and, you know, what are you doing about it?
And they do have the data, and they have to report it to the state. But one, I think that we can have influence over it. Two, I think it's part of our job to help educate residents on, you know, how things are, and so I think it's a good goal. Two, I think National Grid should come in. Let's get them on the agenda. And we've had influence on things like Verizon Wireless. I know we had issues where it was, people were saying, geez, is anybody noticing anything? And I know, and I can't remember whether it was you, Colin, or Matt, and I said, hey, what's going on? And that did get resolved. There was an issue. And so I think we do have, while we're not providing those services, we do have influence, and we can impact some of those things.
Awesome. Oh, and Mr. Chair, one other thing about the power outages. Part of the conversation was, you know, other residents chiming in to say, it's not National Grid's fault if there's an accident, and, you know, but I would challenge that and say, I know that NEMCOG is doing a lot of work around Vision Zero, which has to do with improving road safety. And so I think tying back other work that we're doing with other organizations and being able to show value in multiple ways, I think would be awesome.
Well, we talked about it at the beginning, right, with speed. Why are people getting in accidents? Well, perhaps they're not driving maybe we have some road safety challenges that we can help, and that's where all those things fit together, right?
Yeah.
So I absolutely think it's a good one. I think it's in there. It's something that we should, you know, we'll build out over the course of time to say, how do we effectively act on some of those things? Because, you know, I don't think we're going to be, we're not going to have our own light and power.
Sure?
I'm sure.
All right. A couple of things. One,
Okay,
just,
please.
and I don't want to beat to death the National Grid thing, but I think the
Sorry,
thing that
National Grid.
frustrates people is the sort of lack of communication. You see, you know, they, on their website, it says there's an outage in your area and on a projected time. I would love for them to say, there was an accident, right? Or a transformer blew up, or whatever it is, or a line went down. But just so that you had a sense of why did it happen? Did it happen because it just happened, or was there a reason? If I saw in there that said there was an automobile accident, like, okay, that's not National Grid's fault. I'm still sitting in the dark, but I probably don't feel as bad about it or as ticked off about it as I would if, you know, something in their infrastructure failed. That's the end of that discussion. Going back to your earlier question, though, Mr. Chair, about is this the right number of goals? I think this is absolutely the right number of goals. I mean, Colin is Superman, but right now we have 16 goals here that he is either completely in charge of or primarily in charge of.
Yeah.
I can't imagine layering more goals than this in a single year.
Oh, we used to have more goals.
The
We used to have
reason
18
I
or
asked the
19.
question.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, but the reason I asked the question is because of what you just said. Is because I sit there and say, is it
That's
too
a lot.
many?
No,
Yeah.
And, because
not. It's not too many.
Ron's got 17 more he's
Not
waiting
too
to
many.
throw.
And I think the reality, from my perspective, and I don't want to take away from what you're saying, from my perspective, I think it's the right things that we should be working on. Whether there are really 16 goals or whether there's 12 when we start to thinking about how, you know, what are the commonalities and how many are day-to-day activities that need to be done more efficiently, and how many are more, you know, like I look at the transit, you know, the
Right.
train. That's a long-term, you know, vision type of thing.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think all the things that are there are important. I think we could organize them perhaps a little bit differently, maybe combine some things. But I always worry that if you have too many goals, you get one of these, you get paralysis, because you sit there and go, I have no idea where to start. There's just so many things that are there, and I think
Colin has a fantastic staff.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the right number of
Yeah.
goals. Fantastic
All right,
staff.
fine.
Right, Jackie?
I don't disagree. I don't think we should add more goals. I think 16, 15 is more than enough.
Yes.
And I just one last nit on the solar one. Have we looked at the new school, and is that eligible for solar, and is that not a ideal place for a huge solar array?
The new school will be solar ready. The Tyngsborough Public Schools have their own solar arrangement.
Yep.
And we've talked from time to time about, you know, working together on that front. It will be solar ready, whether it's something that we initiate or they initiate. The plan is for there to be solar on that. I think it'll be part of the agreement that they have for their schools.
There's not solar on the roof? When we just watched the video during graduation and they had the drone that went over the building.
Which
There is
building?
solar in the high
Which
school.
building?
The high school has solar
The
panels.
high school does
Yes.
have solar.
Maybe that's what I was
The
seeing.
middle school doesn't.
The
Okay.
middle school that
It's
we're
not there
building,
yet.
yeah.
Yep. Great.
But once again, I would want to stress that it's not their solar versus, you know, the highway, the Council on Aging is our solar. It's all of our solar, right? And so
Correct.
we should be working together when we're evaluating where we're doing projects like that. It's not the school department that's looking at just their own solar, it's the towns.
Absolutely.
I think the only challenge we have there is who has the authority.
It's not you.
And
yeah.
so we don't have that authority in those situations. So that's a
That's the
state,
tricky part.
that's a state
Yeah, yeah.
challenge. I get it. You know, you sit there and say, well, we're one town, and I think that's where the residents need to be aware on some of those things. But yeah, I mean, there's certain things like with library and
Mm-hmm.
there are things we have authority over and there are things that we don't have authority over, even though you look at it and say, well, it makes perfect sense to have an overarching view of that.
Right. Since we're all paying for it.
Exactly. Totally with you. Other questions, comments?
Good.
Do you feel comfortable with the 16? Do you feel like you can accomplish that?
Yes, I think that the good thing about these goals is that they all follow common themes. And so I think if you said to me, here are 16 really large projects you have to complete by the end of the month, I'd be like, well, guys, you got to be a little more realistic. But in this case, you know, I think that the convenient part about the theme around these goals is that work toward one of them is really work toward one or two of them or 3 or 4 of them. So I think this is a really good core group of goals right here.
Yeah, and I think we can work together to identify, some of these are things that are gonna happen all the time, right? So if efficiencies, right? That isn't an event. Those are things that are gonna happen on a regular basis. Some of these are more longer term, and I think what we need to do is just work with you to say, okay, this is what the scope is of this item, and then here's what can realistically be achieved this year, because that's what we need to do. You and I need to work through that to make sure that, because when we do your review and all that stuff, it's saying, well, you're not gonna get all 16 of these done in a year, because
Right.
some of these are multi-year things. Are there some where it's like, okay, at least we're directionally correct, and here's some of the sub-projects, if you will, that are getting done? And that's where I said, I think maybe reorganizing them and grouping some things, we can do some things to make it a little bit clearer. But the net on it is, these are the things that are important for us to be aware of, to help support and help Colin achieve.
I think if he can get the Lowell to Nashua extension done this year, I think he should have a huge race.
I might start building it myself.
Huge race.
Lay
Huge
some
race.
rail.
All right, so we don't, do we need to approve these? I mean,
I don't think we have in the past.
I don't think you necessarily need
I
to.
No.
think it's a working
this
document,
is, yeah,
kinda.
exactly. We haven't done it in the past that way. So can we move on to the schedule?
Absolutely.
All right, take us through the
All
updated
right.
schedule.
Here you have a very long Excel spreadsheet. This schedule most closely now mirrors, taking into consideration the holidays being different and people's availability, the schedule that you operated on this year. So your next meeting here would be July 8th. We'd be asking you to approve year-end transfers. The Finance Committee will meet that same Wednesday to do theirs. In the summertime, you're looking at generally 2 weeks between, or 3 weeks
3
between
weeks.
meetings. But then obviously recognizing that when we get toward fall town meeting and then budget season, it's not really feasible for you to have so much time off. There are some cases where you can't avoid that, like around Christmas and New Year, unless you all wanted to come here on the holidays. But aside from that, you're looking at an every 2 week schedule. There weren't, we still included plenty of leeway on the finalizing town meeting warrants, but we added like the notes in here when you absolutely have to have them completed by. Certainly, the sooner we get them finalized, the better we can start advertising them and getting people's input. October 22nd is your fall town meeting. And then we've input the annual town meeting on May 6th with the pre-town meeting the week before. So it's a pretty straightforward schedule. Certainly, in some of the times where there's 3 weeks between, obviously you always have the option to add additional meetings. And as we get outside of town meeting season next year, if there was no need for a meeting, you could certainly choose to not convene the meeting. But the convenient thing, the great part about setting your schedule ahead of time is we'll preload it to the website. People will be able to see it far in advance. And for our planning purposes, we know when to schedule things like public hearings, et cetera.
Any questions, comments? Where possible, we tried to avoid the ones where multiple people weren't available. We need to maintain a quorum, but we know that people have things going on. People are going to go on vacation. I would encourage you to go on vacation. So this looked good to me.
Looks good.
I think that we should get it on the website, as getting these days. I know I work from that on when I schedule stuff. It's like, oh, hang on, I got a meeting. Do you want a formal vote on this?
Sure.
Okay.
That way, if any of you tell me you can't make the meetings, I'll say, wait a minute. I'm just kidding.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve the schedule as presented.
So moved.
Seconded.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That carries 4-0-0. Okay. I guess we'll do select board reports. We gotta remember to, right? Select boards, then executive session. So, select board reports. I will open it up to the board, starting with select person Gilfus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, grateful for everyone being patient and generous as I learn and ask questions that are maybe very obvious to other folks. The one thing that I would say to residents, I think many of us are keeping an eye on those conversations on Facebook, but I would love to have them in a more formal way. So come to meetings, email Colin, let us know if you have feedback. A lot of the things that are said there are very valuable. So, the conversation about the utilities, I hadn't thought of that until I saw residents talking about it. So we just encourage people to participate with us because that's how we hear the best things that we can hear.
Select person Cohen.
I'm all set tonight.
Select person Schneider.
I would like to congratulate Kat Foster on the birth of her daughter. Kat works very hard as our assistant town manager, and she had said that her baby is anxious to come to town hall for a visit, so we will all look forward to that visit.
We have work for her planned.
There you go.
And I don't have anything that we haven't already said. I think the town manager's reports and all the things that are there somewhat, I think, helps address some of these things. I'm not saying we're gonna get rid of select board reports, I just think it's, those are the great times to bring some of those things up. So, as you may or may not know from the list that's there, our next meeting is July 8th, as Colin indicated, and the remainder of the schedule will be posted, but
Happy 4th of July.
happy 4th of July is coming up, yes. Everybody, please be safe with travel.
Fireworks.
Yeah, I don't want to say because they're not legal.
If you're out of state
Yeah,
and
if
you
you're
decide
out
to
of
participate
state,
in.
Fires, your, cookouts, all those things, please be safe. You saw many of our public safety folks here who do a fantastic job. I would really like it if they didn't have to work so hard during some of these things, so please be extra cautious and think before you do some of those things. But before we go, I guess I will entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Chair, I move that we go into executive session under exemption 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares. U.S. District Court Case 1:CV-CV-10931-ADB and NEPBA Local 8A.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Mr. Schneider.
In favor.
Selectperson Gilfus.
In favor.
In favor.
I am also in favor. That carries 4-0-0. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.